And today on That's Classic, it's going to be another great one. I know that's what I always say, but it's true. Without a doubt, we have somebody that is very iconic. If I've ever heard of anyone that I've interviewed, this is today we have Jon Provost on from Lassie, and he played Timmy on the Lassie show. I mean, pretty incredible. Thanks a bunch for being on, John.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, heck yeah. Thrilled to have you on. And just so that everybody that is listening out there, once again, if you go to www.youtube.com/that's classic TV, you can see this interview and see John in all his glory and the fact that we have matching shirts on. So there you go.
It's in the air.
It's in the air. Exactly.
We've been having devastating rains and stuff up here, but it's a beautiful blue sky. So I think that's what, and blue's my favorite color. So, hey, we're good to go.
John, you know what's funny is, well, first of all, my name's John. Your name's
Yes.
John. Blue is my favorite color as well, which is ironic. So,
Yep.
I kind of have to say that's great. Yeah, that's right. You are right in where all the rains come. So I'm glad that you're actually here and able to do the interview.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. Well, we're on high ground, so we're okay.
Okay, very cool. When you were on the Lassie show, did you realize, I've talked to a lot of different celebrities and they at the time they were like, look, we went to work, a day ended, went home, I was with my family, we went back. Did you realize just how big Lassie was?
We didn't have a clue. It's like you said, it's so true. We treated it like that's what I did. My brother and sister got up every morning and they went to school. My father went to work. Mom and I went to the studio
Mhm.
and made television. But no, we did, and we were black and white. We had not a clue that people would still be watching the show now, what, 55 years later plus, in
Right.
over 50, in over 50 countries we're still in reruns. On the US, we're on a dozen different cable networks, Antenna TV, Retro TV,
Oh my
you name.
God.
And sometimes it's on at 3 in the morning.
Yeah,
So
right.
you can't beat it.
So what was this also pre-residuals? Like I talked to Pat Priest from the Munsters and she said, "Look, we're on everywhere and I love it, but it was right before, they did the residuals." Is that true in your case?
John, I have not gotten a Lassie residual in over 55 years.
Wow.
We in our contracts, it was for US distribution only. The next year we were in 128 countries.
Oh my
Didn't get
gosh.
that. Um, as far as residuals went, we were given 3 residuals. They could show it 3 times, and we got paid for those first 3. But then after, and that was gone the first month after the show was over.
Wow.
And so then for years and years, they can just show them. But you know how that all really happened? Ronald Reagan, before he became president of the United States, was president of Screen Actors Guild.
Correct.
When he was my president, and I've been a member, I'm still a paying member since 1957. I think I'm probably one of the oldest paying members of SAG.
Yeah.
Anyway, it came across his desk the question of residuals, that newer shows were getting residuals in perpetuity, but
Right.
our older shows, we were limited. So it was on his desk and he drew a red line in the sand. And what he said was, any shows made prior to 1965, you got nothing.
Uh,
Any TV series made after 65, you got paid residuals in perpetuity. Your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, your great great grandchildren would be getting residuals. Your residuals.
oh,
So I don't know why he sold us out, because he must have known a lot of people that had series that were in series before 65. So, or it might have been 64, 64, 65.
mhm.
So that's how that happened. And it's okay because that's the way it was. I
Yep.
mean, so we just accept it as it was. Now, the other funny thing is, movies that I did after Lassie and before Lassie and some other television. I
Yeah.
do get residuals for some of those. As a matter of fact, I just got a residual recently from Paramount for a movie I did with Natalie Wood, Robert Redford, Charlie Bronson, Mary Badham, Scout.
This property is condemned.
Yes, this property is condemned.
Yep.
Residual. It was early last year, 1 cent, penny. And I have a bunch of residual checks, that for $2 and whatever. But I'd never gotten one for a penny. It's like, come on, guys, why?
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. Look, I want to talk about Lassie, but you can't throw me this property is condemned with that level of cast and not talk about it. I mean, come on. What and by the way, so Robert Redford, I believe, and I could be wrong, but that was definitely one of his first, right?
I believe it was his second film.
Mm.
And the story was, at the time, Natalie Wood was a superstar.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so could pick who she wanted to work with. And my understanding is she picked Robert Redford for that part. She had, and but no, it was and Sidney Pollack was the director.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yes, and I believe it was his first direct motion picture direction.
Wow.
So yeah, it was. And oh yeah, no, it was a great cast. And we spent months down in Bay St. Louis and Mississippi and in Alabama filming the movie. But yeah, it was great. It was a great cast and a great story.
And how was I mean, the obvious questions here, but what was it like working with Natalie Wood? I mean, you were not I mean, you were a kid, but you weren't a kid. You were old enough.
I was 14 and she was a beautiful woman and small. I mean, she was like my size.
Yeah.
But it was, a little bit older, but
Sure.
enamored by her. She was beautiful. But the funny thing is, Charlie Bronson, he always plays the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
So he played the bad guy, and I don't know if I'd ever worked with a quote method actor, but Charlie Bronson was a method actor, so he was that bad guy 24 on the set and off the set 24/7. He was the bad guy, and he scared Mary and I. Mary Badham. Mary was, I think, 12 or 13.
Scout. Yeah.
And he just we stayed away from him.
Wow.
He was not a lot of fun. And Robert Blake, he was,
Robert Blake was in that?
Yeah.
My God.
No, it was a great cast. Great cast.
Well, how old would Robert Blake have been around that time?
Good question. I don't really know.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I knew the other cast. I guess I didn't put together Robert Blake. And so were you, yes, she was beautiful, but was it when you were, I don't know if you were in direct scenes with Natalie Wood or Robert Redford, but when you were on set or whatever, was it pretty, some people say they've got a star quality. Did you see that? Did you go, wow, this is acting?
Well, sure. But, I've always been asked over the years, who was my favorite actor? Who did I look up to? I started when I was not quite 3 years old, my first movie, So Big. And then the second movie, Country Girl, Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly. And, I worked with great people. But I grew up on the soundstage. And when I went to the makeup room in the morning, June Lockhart would come in rollers, from home.
Yeah.
Or same with Natalie. I mean, just everybody, they were just people. And so I saw them as people like me. And they were doing their job like I was doing my job. So we were kind of like equals, even though but of course there were certain people that, Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger, he did a Lassie episode. Well, come on, any little 7-year-old kid, and here's the Lone Ranger. Hey, that's a different story. But it's really strange. I mean, I did admire people and stuff, but I just considered them like we were equals.
Were they which we'll go back to Clayton Moore by the way as well. I'm sure all the Lassie people are like, hey, wait a minute, where's the Lassie stuff? But this is really interesting. So when you were with Natalie Wood off set or Robert Redford, what were they like as people? Because some people go on and they get on that screen and they're somebody, but they walk off and they're not very approachable. What were these people like?
Everybody, like I said, the only one that really wasn't approachable was Charlie. But
Yeah.
no, everybody else was not. Of course, Natalie, being the star, she didn't hang around with us. I mean, she was, she'd go to her dressing room and things like that. But no, everybody was approachable back. And it was the time, John. Things were different. This was 1964.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the paparazzi. We didn't have all that crazy stuff going on, and so it was like family. It was like we were all working together. We all knew what we did, and it was more like a family thing. It wasn't like going to work and shut up and sit down. It wasn't
Yeah.
quite like.
How wonderful. So let's just let's put that out there on Clayton Moore on Lassie. I can imagine. I mean, I know he is the Lone Ranger. It's like, I'm sorry, he's it. So what was that like for you? You're
Yeah.
on set going, that's the Lone Ranger.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing was too, I mentioned earlier, I would go to work in the morning and June Lockhart would come in, like, she didn't care what she looked like when she got to work.
Yeah.
But an hour and a half in the makeup room, she was a goddess when she came out.
Yeah.
But Clayton Moore never, well, okay, he was the Lone Ranger, period.
Right up
He
to his death, he was the
he
Lone
lived
Ranger.
Yes, he respected that.
Mhm.
He never let me see him out of costume. He was always the Lone Ranger. And on the very last day, it took us 3.5 days to shoot 1/2 hour.
Wow.
The last day of the shoot, he was leaving, or I was leaving, and he was still in costume. And he called me over and he said, John, it was really nice working with you and Lassie, and I enjoyed this. He said, I want to give you something. And he reached into his holster and pulled out a silver bullet and gave me a silver bullet. So,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, you literally must have like wanted to pass out.
But like everything else, it's what I did every day. Stuff comes in, stuff goes out. And I ended up giving my silver bullet away to a friend of mine, for his birthday or something. And truthfully, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was just like, oh yeah, I got this when I was on, here. But then years later, probably 30, 40 years later, a fan knew that story, and somehow they had gotten a silver bullet back in the day, and they gifted that to me. So I still have my silver bullet.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go back to the start of Lassie. And I know you've probably told this a million times, but I am intrigued. So I hear your mother is this big fan of Jane Wyman, so she gets you this audition. But what first of all, what was that like? Like, were you going, God, I want to be an actor? Or I mean, you're like, what are you 4? I can't, I'm trying to
No,
remember.
I wasn't even 3 years old. And
Wow.
the business, most people get into the business because they know somebody, or whatever. Well, my parents were not show business people. They
Mhm.
were from the South. My father was from Alabama. My mom was from Texas,
Mm.
and they Hollywood in the 1940s, got married. But my father was an aeronautical engineer,
Hmm.
and it was a seamstress when they got married. After they got married, she had my brother, and now she became a housewife. So now she has 3 kids. And we don't even live in Hollywood. We live in Pasadena. Dad's working for Convair, designing airplanes. And she reads an ad in the LA Times that Warner Brothers is looking for a 2 to 3-year-old blonde boy to be in this movie that's starring Jane Wyman.
Wow.
Well, mom, growing up on the farm in Texas, her idol was Jane Wyman. So she thought if she took me on this audition, she was going to meet Jane Wyman and get her autograph.
Oh my gosh.
Only reason she took me. And my father said, "Oh, you're crazy, you don't want to do this." And she said, "Yes, I do. I want to get Jane Wyman's autograph." So long story short, takes me to Warner Brothers. There's over 200 little boys and some little girls who moms cut their hair.
Wow.
I ended up getting the job. And then, and I didn't even have, an agent or anything. Like I said, they weren't in the business. They didn't know.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we're sitting there, and this woman comes over to my mother and says, "I think your son is going to get this job." And Mom said, "Well, that's great, but when do I get to meet Jane Wyman? I'll get her autograph." She said, "Don't worry about it." She goes, "But what we need to know is, who is your agent?"
Wow.
"Oh no, we own a home. My husband bought a home. We don't need an agent." She goes, "No, no, no, ma'am, you don't understand. Not a real estate agent, but a theatrical agent to represent your son."
Oh
And
wow.
I don't even know what one of those look like. And I wouldn't even know where to find one. And the woman steps back and she says, "Well, my name is Lola Moore, and I'm the #1 child agent in Hollywood. And
No.
I would like to represent your son." And Mom says, "Well, do we have to pay you?" And she said, "Oh, no, no. I'll just take 10% of whatever your son makes." Mom said, "That's great, but when do I get my autograph?" So Mom got her autograph. I got an agent, and that's how it all started.
Wow, that's wild. Now I
Yeah.
read this and I don't necessarily think it whatever. I'm just curious. It said that your mom, they actually paid a salary to be on the movie. Is that true or not?
You know, Unfortunately, not with us. Um, I really don't know. I don't know if they may have get paid her to be a guardian or something.
hmm
I
hmm
I don't. That's a great question though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was interesting when I read that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing too is so you're on Lassie and obviously you came in off of was it Tommy Rettig? Was that who? Yeah.
The show started in 54, and Tommy did the show for 3 years, but he was 17 years old. He wanted out,
hmm
and why they were looking for a new kid to replace Tommy.
Did you stay close with Tommy through the years or not?
Well, yes. Um, when we were filming, because Tommy was 10 years older,
Right.
you know, and I'm 7, and he doesn't want anything to do with this little 7-year-old. That makes a lot of sense. I get
Yeah.
that. Um, but years later, as we became adults, yeah, every time I was in LA or something, I'd call him up, for let's get together for dinner. And Tommy was a great guy. I'm still in touch with his children.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and very unfortunate, that he passed away so young. And
Mhm.
a brilliant guy, really smart guy.
Wow. I found it very interesting. I felt like he had left the show. Obviously, you're right. He kind of felt like he had gotten older. And then you, after 7 seasons, you kind of, in essence, kind of do the same thing.
You got it. Yep, I had a 7-year contract with a 3-year option. 7 years was coming to an end. We were still in the top 10. And the Rather Corporation, they wanted to go on for 3 more years. But the option was ours, was mine. So my
Wow.
parents, you can make this decision. Do you want to be Timmy for 3 more years or not? I'm 14. The hormones are kicking in. Girls are
Mhm.
starting to look a little bit different than they did when 2 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was tired of doing Lassie. I was tired of being Timmy. Everybody thought I was called me Timmy, and no, I'm growing up. I'm becoming a young man now.
hmm
So yeah, I wrote my pink slip for Lassie, and I wanted to work. I did some other TV stuff, a little, like Mr. Ed, stuff like that.
Yeah. You
And
were
then
like was it the paper boy? Is that what it
yeah,
was? Yeah.
and I don't want to burst people's, bubbles, but Ed didn't really talk.
Well, actually, how did I never really thought about that because I watched Mr. Ed. So when you were on the show, is there somebody off stage reading the lines like as the horse, or what's going on there?
Oh, sure. And the way they made Ed talk, a lot of people thought, like with the dog, you put peanut butter on the top of their mouth and they go crazy.
Yeah.
Um, well, everybody was trying, how do they make Ed talk? Well, his trainer would put a little piece of fishing line under his top lip, and you couldn't see it, and he'd just tug on it, and it would make his lip go up. And that made him talk. So,
Wow, is that
yeah,
interesting?
just one of the little insights.
Yeah. What about Alan Yun working with him?
Alan was great, and he had I had a really great relationship with the 3 different Lassies that I worked with in 7 years. He had a very close relationship with Ed. As a matter of fact, every day before work, he would meet Ed at his stable, which was out in the San Fernando Valley,
Mhm.
and they would ride. He would ride Ed every morning before work.
Okay, that is one of the most special moments I've heard of.
Yeah, and that's so cool.
Oh, wow, is that neat to hear. I love that story. So did you, recently, well, first of all, tell me this. Were there a lot of child actors around at that time that kind of bonded with from the standpoint that you're all, like wasn't Bill Mumi at that time? And yeah.
Sure. Well, okay. On we filmed at Desilu Studios, which was the old RKO.
Hmm.
Um, my 3 sons on that lot. So we were at one end, they were down at the other. So, Stan and Barry Livingston from that show, but all of us, I mean, Jay North from Dennis the Menace, and Jeannie Russell, and, a little bit older, Paul Peterson, and, Tony Dow, and all these people from all the different shows. Um, we were all working at the same time, and we would see each other at all kinds of different events.
Mm.
Bring all the kids out. And I'm still in touch with so many of the kids, like Jay North. We kind of grew up together, Dennis, and, love Jay. We've been in touch, and just, I mean, dozens and dozens of kids. Unfortunately, we're getting up there in age, and
I
so
know.
losing people. But um, we were kind of like a fraternity,
Mm.
yeah. So you may not see each other, for months or a year, but when you do, it's like you immediately have this bond, this camaraderie, because we were all there. We all did it. We all, had our bumps and bruises, and so we can all relate to each other.
Wow, that is so special. I love I just love hearing that. And I
Yeah.
saw it's funny, I saw a photo and I believe you were in that photo with all the child actors at Tony's funeral. Um yeah, was that I mean it was kind of a really cool photo, and it kind of also tugged at my heart, to be honest with you. I When I saw that, what was that like for you to kind of like, because you were both in that Plain Patty, am I correct on that? That was that a film that you had done together?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a celebration of Tony's life.
Hmm.
It was, yeah, super, super guy. I never heard him say a disparaging word about anybody. He was that kind of a guy. And it's just, it's great that we all can come together because, like I said, we all grew up uh, the viewers out there grew up with us on TV, but we all grew up together. So
Wow, wow, that's really kind of cool. Did you, by the way, did you mentioned a couple times we were out here or whatever? So did you shoot on a soundstage primarily, or were you on location most of the time?
50-50. The house, the barn, and a small barnyard, and and a small little forest were all on a soundstage. But we filmed 50% on location, which would be all, the San Fernando Valley, basically.
Oh, I
Because
got you.
back in the day, I mean, there was, farms and ranches. As a matter of fact, Red Weatherwax, the owner of Lassie, he had a 60-acre ranch out in Canyon Country, which is um, out by Valencia,
Hmm.
out there where Magic Mountain is. There was nothing out there when we were filming the shows. And so Red had this ranch, And a lot of times on Friday after work, I'd jump in his station wagon with Lassie and Lassie's double and drive out and spend the weekend at the ranch. And it was good for me because I was get out of the city just to go and relax. And he had a pond and I could fish and stuff. And but it was also a great way for me to bond, and Lassie and I to bond together. And so I think there were two reasons that I was allowed to do that. One, because it was good for me just to get out and be a kid, and the other was for me and Lassie to bond. And I loved the dogs; they were great.
By the way, have you ever owned a collie yourself?
As a matter of fact, started the show when I was 7, a little kid. Little kids can be crazy with big dogs. So Red Weatherwax, he said, look, if you don't bug Lassie this first year, don't pull his tail, don't ride him, don't, sit on him, whatever. He said, for your 8th birthday, I'll give you a Lassie puppy.
Come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I did everything I could that first year, not to do things with Lassie I wasn't supposed to. And for my birthday, I was given a Lassie puppy. He was a male, and I named him Rudd after Red Weatherwax, the owner. But that was the only collie I've ever owned. Always had dogs.
I mean, that is such a cool story. So, by the way, Red Weatherwax, and maybe it's just the name, but he's famous in his own right just because of all this. What was he like as I guess as a man? You said you'd go out there on the weekends. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's like you're living the life.
Yeah, no, Rudd was super. Rudd was a tough guy. Now, personally, I never knew my grandfathers. They had passed. My grandmother, story. So Rudd kind of became my surrogate grandfather, and he watched over me on the set like he watched over his dogs. And Rudd, like I say, Rudd was a great guy. He was a tough guy. He had rough edges, but he was a brilliant dog trainer. I learned so much from him about dogs, about training. The main thing I learned from him was respect for the animals, respect for the dogs. We worked with every kind of animal on Lassie. You name it, we worked with it.
Wow.
And trainers that were horrible and would be very cruel to their animals, whatever, but not Rudd. And his whole training method was reward and praise and treats. Praise the dog when they do things. And Lassie was always given a treat after every shot, and a lot of times I would eat the treats because they were good. Yeah, it was just real meat. His wife would boil a roast every night, and they would cut it up in pieces of meat. So he'd be giving it to Lassie all day long, and it was good. So I ate it too. But
wow.
Red was great. One thing too, everybody remembers Red Weatherwax because of Lassie, but Rudd had some other really famous dogs also. One, you ever heard of this show by I think it's called The Wizard of Oz?
Oh, come on.
And they had a little dog in there called Toto. Well, that was one of Rudd's dogs.
Really?
Yep. Old Yeller.
Oh, yeah.
Old Yeller was actually a rescue dog. Back in the day, we called shelters pounds, and Rudd would visit all the local pounds in the San Fernando Valley. And if he saw a dog, he said, okay, I want that dog. Well, that's how he found Old Yeller.
Oh, wow. That is so cool.
Another one of his dogs was Asta, a wire hair terrier
The Thin Man.
The Thin Man from the movies and the TV series. Those were Weatherwax dogs. So, he had all kinds of stuff going on. But Lassie was his favorite and his most long running because he started with Lassie, and Lassie Come Home, 1944, with Elizabeth Taylor and Roddy McDowell.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first dog, and his name was Pal. I knew Pal. Pal only made movies. He made, I think, 5 or 6 movies. Then they actually did live television live radio before they did television.
Live radio with a dog?
There was a half-hour Lassie radio program. Yes, and I have copies of it. And Red Weatherwax would introduce the show, and they would, it was just like, the Green Hornet or Batman or one of those radio shows.
Yeah.
And so, and then they started the series. Well, when they started the series, it was Pal's son, the second generation Lassie. And I knew him. I worked with him for my first year. Then his son took over.
Oh, come on.
He wasn't working out really well. So Rudd had to bring in that guy's son. They were all males and all, direct descendants. So I worked with 3, but the last one I worked with for 5 years. He was my favorite. I loved that dog. We did everything together. We ate together. We slept together. I mean, I loved him.
Wow.
But if I told him to do something, John, he'd look at me and go, "Hey, you're my buddy, but you're not my trainer."
Oh
And
my gosh.
he respond to what, Rudd or one of his sons or his other trainer would have them do.
That's so interesting. It's funny. You made me think of this in that moment when you said, look, he wouldn't do anything. I had Burt Ward on, who, of course, played Robin. Well, Burt is very involved. Yeah. In the big dogs. Like, I'm talking the big guys.
I know his Gentle Giants.
Yeah. Gentle Giants.
Yeah. Burt's been this for years and years. Great.
Something he told me that made me think of what you just did is he said, look, if you look at these big dogs, they look at you as an equal because you're on the same height as them, the same level. And I look back to what you're talking about. I'm thinking, who knows? Maybe Lassie looked you kind of eye to eye and was like, you're not that guy.
There you go. There you go. Because Lassie was a big dog and I was a little kid. So
yeah, it's so interesting. That might have been it.
That's great. No, Burt, we go back because my brother actually went to high school with him before the series. Oh. And now here's a good one. And I'm sure you've never heard this before, but a lot of the studios change people's names.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of names have been changed, but luckily mine wasn't, and others weren't. But Burt Ward's was. You want to know his real name?
What was his real name? I don't think I do know that.
Sparky Gervis. I swear, Sparky Gervis. He went to high school with my brother.
That's a great.
Yeah, this is Robin. This is Sparky Gervis. No, not gonna work.
Oh my God, that's a funny story. That's a good one. I'm surprised I didn't see that. I love that Sparky. If I'd have known that, I would have called Burt Sparky just for fun.
Fact, over the years, if I knew somebody was going to interview him, I'd say, "Hey, just call him Sparky and see what happens."
Oh my God, he'd have busted a gut. Oh, that's great. That's great. So look, I understand that at times on the set, things got a bit dangerous for you. I mean, I've heard that story about you in like the, almost drowning. And I don't think most people that watch Lassie thought, oh, he was really in danger. It really seriously sounds like you had a few
few incidences. I mean, television was new and we didn't have all the kind of special effects. We didn't have, computers with CGI. They couldn't generate, images and do all that. So it had to be real. It had to be you. Sometimes I would have a stand-in. But yeah, we were doing this one episode where Lassie and I were on a river and got on a raft. It broke up. We were thrown into the water and blah, blah, long story. But when we did it, they couldn't use doubles for me or Lassie because they really had to see us. And we didn't rehearse it. We couldn't rehearse it. So it happened. And unfortunately, when I hit the rapids, I hit a big rock. It knocked all the air out of me. And so I'm gasping. I'm coming up. But I'm doing exactly what I was supposed to be acting, but I wasn't acting. It was for real.
Wow.
Luckily, one of the there was a stuntman on set and he saw what was happening and he jumped in the river and pulled me out, but then he ended up almost drowning. So I mean, can you imagine them doing that to a star of a show today?
No way.
No way. But we didn't know. Who knew? And things were new, and so when they said, do this, and that might be a little dangerous. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it.
Wow. Were there any other moments that kind of you were like a little nervous, like,
Well,
got a little hairy?
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier, we worked with every kind of animal. We worked with a couple times, but once with this one chimpanzee. Um, Turns out he had been rescued, I guess you might say, from a circus. So
Ooh.
he was and now he's working on TV shows, and he was not a real happy camper. And the last day of filming, he was sitting on his stool with his trainer standing next to him, and I was leaving, going home, and we'd worked together for 3 days, and I just went over and put my hand on his head and said, see you later, buddy. And I'm like 9 years old or something, and he grabbed my hand, stuck this thumb, my right thumb, in his mouth and started to gnaw it off.
Oh my God.
And I'm screaming, blood's flying, and he jumps off his stool. Now he's running across the set, and with my thumb, and me trailing him.
Oh my God, is that scary?
So his trainer, like I said, he was an old circus guy, he had a gun that shot blanks, pulled out his gun, shot it in the air a couple times, and that shocked the chimpanzee. So he let go of my thumb, but I still have the scars to prove, to show there. So, we did a lot of crazy things, but no, Lassie never bit me, and I never fell in a well. So.
Okay, yeah, I saw that was the name of the book too. That, yeah, and I was curious about that too. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, if I
And
mean, I would,
there were a lot of other little, ancillary things. Well, okay, one, Stan Livingston, who played Chip on My Three Sons.
oh sure,
Okay. Well, there was this early scene when I was first started the show where I was supposed to be in a lake, not a river this time, but in a lake, and fell out of the rowboat, and I'm, drowning and calling for help. Well, I wasn't a good swimmer. Stan was. So they hired Stan Livingston to be my double in this lake scene. So he's out there, and falls out of the boat into the water. Well, unbeknownst, and he was a champion swimmer.
yeah.
To him, the water was only a few feet deep, and then it was mud. So when he fell in, his feet got stuck in the mud, and he's down trying up, and so you never know.
Oh my gosh, that's so wild. Well, two things, by the way. He's going to be on the show soon. Unfortunately, he had an injury, and he is going to be on though. But ironically, you're absolutely right. In fact, I had read Barry had said that Stan was such a good swimmer that's how he got his break. He was on like a bike at the bottom of a swimming pool. The guy was taking a photo, and that photo, they saw his picture. I mean, bizarre,
Yeah,
But,
it's how they discover people.
yeah, it's crazy. So let's go back. Obviously we've mentioned June Lockhart a couple of times, but previous to June, we had Cloris Leachman, which I'll be honest with you, I still look at that and I go, huh? Like Cloris, I mean, no offense to Cloris, I actually met her one time, myself. She was out there. She was
Loris was crazy.
Yeah.
But just a wacko. But a great lady.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
she was hired to be Ruth Martin on Lassie, and she signed her contract, for 6 years. And after a few months on set, she said, yeah, this isn't my cup of tea. Well, I mean, she wasn't. She's more out there. And she literally said, I am not baking cookies on this damn farm for the next 6 years. I want out. So it doesn't work if somebody doesn't want to work.
No.
So they let her go. But unfortunately, they had to let the John Shepard, who was my father on the show, the husband, they had to let him go too.
Oh.
One Sunday, it's Cloris Leachman and John Shepard as Paul and Ruth Martin. The next Sunday, it's June Lockhart and Hugh Riley. And the studio didn't even get one letter. Like, what happened? You changed the people. You know why? Because people didn't care about them. They cared about the kid and the dog.
Yeah.
That's what the show is about. So that happened. But yeah, it was crazy. And I'd known, Cloris back then. And then many years later, met her again. It's just, great lady. But yeah, she wasn't that was a big miscast.
Oh,
But they got June. I mean, June was perfect.
oh God.
Part. And still, and June is still with us, 97 years old. On June the 25th, she turned 97. She's doing well.
Yeah, yeah. That, by the way, that's the other thing too. Well, one, I wanted her on the show like crazy, but she is at that age and she can't, and I totally respect that. But I understand that. Yeah, you have stayed in touch with her through all these years. I mean, that's
Oh
really
yeah,
cool.
yeah. No, June, we always have, and never missed a birthday card, or she never missed a Christmas card. Great. And we always talked over the holidays, and especially her birthday.
Oh, that's so cool. I love hearing that. That is so cool. So then you go, I mean, there's a lot that happens in between there, but a couple of things. You do the new Lassie, and
Hmm.
did they approach you on that like very early on? Were you involved in it? Because obviously you're playing, oh, am I correct, a real estate agent in that one?
Yeah, it was. Well, I was a traveling correspondent or something. It was
Okay.
it was it was crazy. No, as a matter of fact, I heard through the grapevine that somebody was going to be doing a new Lassie TV show.
Hmm.
A little research found out it was Al Burton at Universal. So I called up Al and I said, "Hey, I understand you're going to be doing a new Lassie show." He goes, "Who's this?" I said, "It's Jon Provost, Timmy from the show." And he goes, "Oh, well, I just want to tell you first, I'm not going to use anybody from the old show." And I said, "Okay, that's fine. But what about background, behind the camera, like writing, consulting, something like that? Hey, I grew up with Lassie, I am Lassie." So,
Yeah,
and he said,
duh.
"Hey," because I like that idea. He says, "Why don't we meet for lunch?" So, and I live up in Northern California, so it's 450 miles. So I jump on a plane, I fly down there,
Yeah.
we have lunch, and over a long lunch he says, "I think maybe there is a place for you in front of the camera."
Wow.
Okay. He goes, "But you're not Timmy grown up, you're this other guy, your name is Steve McCulloch." And I go, "What? Okay, fine." So yeah, long story short, did the show. It was great. Unfortunately, it was a little bit too sitcom-y, not like Lassie,
It
the
was real.
last.
There was a reality to it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the second year, Al Burton, because Bob Weatherwax, who was Rudd's son, he had Lassie. At that time was the 8th generation Lassie,
Wow.
and we went to Al and said, "Al, this is not working so great." And he said, "Okay, then you guys give me some ideas for some scripts, for some stories." So we did. And now he started using people that were in the show. Tommy Rettig did an episode.
Wow.
Um, you know, uh, Roddy McDowell, who was in Lassie Come Home.
Uh,
You know, and it was great, but we didn't get picked up after that. So, didn't work
yeah.
out, but doing it.
Did it bring back, even though it was a different type of story, just being on that set with Lassie, did that kind of take you back?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, yeah. And working with the kids on the show, because I had niece and nephew, Wendy Cox and Will Nipper, on the show, and who actually Will, he really went on. He changed his name to Will Estes, and he's been on True Bloods for, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. So
Oh
no,
my gosh.
and you ever heard of this kid by the name of Leo DiCaprio or something like that? He got his start on the new Lassie.
Oh my gosh.
That, yep, he had
Wow.
his first. Unfortunately, that was an episode that I wasn't on. I did every other episode, so I never got to meet Leo. I wish I had. Maybe
Oh
I will.
my, oh
Life
my
is
gosh.
going, so maybe I've got a chance.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. By the way, Roddy McDowell, as a kid, I just always kind of idolized his old movies, going back to like, yeah, oh God, the one with W.C. Fields, the very famous one. I can't think of, I can't, I'm trying to think. Was it Great Expectations, or he was in Little Lord Fauntleroy? I can't, no, that was Freddie Bartholomew, but he was but Roddy McDowell, I always, even to Planet of the Apes, what was that like for you though? Because you're a child actor. He was a child actor. Did you guys get a chance off set to kind of, talk a little?
Yeah, that's really fun. We never talked about that, about kids.
Hmm.
Um, working as a child in the industry. But what a great guy. I mean, the kindest, the nicest guy. I mean, he was wonderful, and an incredible photographer, still photographer. 35 millimeter. He was excellent. But yeah, great guy, really nice guy.
Wow, he was probably a natural on the set. I mean, I imagine that's like, yeah, no problem. What, by the way, did you I had seen a shot of you with Lucie Arnaz, and I was just curious, were you had you met her on the show? Were you at all close with her? Was that just at an event or what?
Well, actually, I never went to public school because I was working. So I always had to go to private school. And for high school, went to the private school, Rexford, and just outside of Beverly Hills. But a lot of the kids it was like Dino Martin Jr., Ricky Martin, a lot of kids, that Lucie Arnaz, a lot of kids from the business or whose parents were in the business were cool. But no, we knew each other. I think we dated once or twice, but and here's the funny thing. I never met her mother. Lucie, Desi and Lucie owned the studio.
Oh, totally.
And actually there was a couple different lots. Well, Lucie ran our lot, and that's where she was. And that's where they shot the Lucie series and stuff. And I would see her, on the set. I mean, I was there for 6 years, because the first year we were at a different studio, but never got to meet her.
Wow.
Yeah, saw her a bunch and still watch her on TV.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know. We were talking, Barry was on the show. Barry Livingston was on the show, and he was saying that Lucie would buzz around in this golf cart, and that's how he'd run into her.
Yeah, she had this golf cart. She was going around, and this is a real funny one.
Yeah.
Our stage, there were no restrooms on the stages. They were a different place on the lot. And unfortunately, the closest restroom was like about a city block from where our soundstage was. So when I would have to go, they'd shut, whole production. And sometimes I would, get distracted and, where's the kid? Oh, go find him, go get him. And so I think it was the second year, they gave me a miniature golf cart.
Oh.
So I could make it to the restroom and back faster so I could work. But yeah, that was they said, hey, we'll give him one like Lucie. So I had a little golf cart. It was great. I was a terror, though. Every once in a while, I'd get too close to a production car or something like that, and then somebody called the studio. You better watch that kid. Yeah.
That's so funny. I actually spent a little time on that set myself, but it was more in like the early 90s. I actually know those distances you're talking about, and that would have been nice to have a golf cart. So yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's too funny. So okay, so you leave Lassie. You've done you do This Property Is Condemned, but then you go on and you get a chance to work with somebody that I've always admired, Kurt Russell, in Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. How did that come about that you ended up getting that film?
Well, I was out there. I had an agent. I just finished a movie in the Philippines, excuse me, called The Secret of the Sacred Forest, which nobody has ever seen. And everybody's got to make a real dog. Well, no, I shouldn't say dog. A real bad movie. And that was
good pun. We're talking about Lassie, and you.
Yeah, I know. That's why I kind of clarified it. But no, did this movie with Gary Merrill. It was his last movie. Did it in the Philippines, spent 3 months there. I was 17, had a ball, had a great time. Came back to the States and got the part of Bradley in Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. Wow. So we're filming, and it turns out that it's my birthday and Kurt Russell's. So he turned 17, I turned 18 while we were filming. We're having lunch one day, and I'm going, Kurt, so I've been working I just turned 18, and I've been working for 15 years.
Oh my God.
Maybe I should take a break. And Kurt said, yeah, take a break. You should take a break. So I did. That's when I wrote my Pink Slip again. And pretty much just left the industry, went away to college, moved up to Northern California. After college, got into real estate business, and then did the new Lassie series, and in between, a lot of the talk shows, and I've done some voiceover work for cartoons, and as a matter of fact, I just did my very first sci-fi.
Oh, really?
I am the voice of a robot in a new sci-fi movie called Colonials that's coming out this year. And yeah, it's like he's a floating robot, kind of like, you remember Castaway
Sure.
with Hanks?
Yeah,
And,
the ball.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm like Wilson, I'm like a floating Wilson, but it's my voice, and yeah, it's a cool movie. So finally, yay! After Lassie, June got lost in space. I'm gonna go find her. I'm out there in the universe somewhere. I'm gonna find June.
I love it. Did you by the way, so on Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, I realize you made the decision to leave. What was that like though? I'm imagining that was shot on the Disney lot. I think in fact, I think another who happens to also be a friend, Ronnie Shell, I think he was in that as the
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all the Joe Flynn. I mean, just all the Disney people, and it was great. It was the only Disney thing I'd ever done. I'd never been involved with Disney before. It was great. It was a lot of fun. But I really made a bad decision when I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the computer was the first of 3. So I would have been in 2 more computer movies as Bradley, because he was one of the minor characters, but definitely one of the group. And so I would have done 2 more movies there. But that was it's okay.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It would have been fun. Like I said, I had a great time, and working with Kurt and a bunch of the other guys was so much fun, because they were my peers. We were the same age, and we were growing up. It was different than Lassie.
Right.
So.
Did you have any regrets, by the way, of when you did leave Lassie? Do you ever look back? I mean, do you ever think I wish I stuck around longer or any of that?
No. It was time. It was everything just fit. It's like the same thing like happened with Tommy. No, it was time to move on and to do something different. I do think that the production company, the Rathers, made a bad decision by getting rid of the family. See, that's when Lassie was always with a family. A kid could have been a little girl. It didn't have to be a boy. Right. I could have given Lassie. They had us, move to Australia, and we couldn't take Lassie with us. Blah blah blah. And then Lassie, ends up with the forest ranger, which didn't quite make a lot of sense to me. It's a dog and a kid, so I think they made a mistake there. Now, whether they were doing it because for budget, who knows? But I think the real thing with Lassie is Lassie and a kid.
Well, it is. It's Lassie and a kid in that sense of family. I mean, that I think that's why this show is still on the air. I mean, I can't tell you how many people write to me and say this is what it was about. So that's interesting. By the way, did you go through like a teen idol stage? That kind of like that. I don't, lack of a better word from that time, was like Tiger Beat and
Oh yeah, all of those teen magazines, all of them. Yes. They did it with all of us, the kids that grew up and became teenagers, because it was a big deal. And it was kind of like a teen idol. And of course, they always tried to get you to cut a record, and so I had a meeting at Capitol Records in Hollywood with one of the big shots.
What?
And did an audition, and I'm sorry, I love music, but I can't dance and I can't sing. Now, I did one last episode, a Christmas show, where I sang Silent Night, and I did a really good job, but that was the only time.
Oh my gosh.
This wasn't, I'm not the musical guy, that's the way it is. You can't do it all.
Right. Just the fact that you got the opportunity, though, how cool is that?
Yeah.
What about speaking of that, it's hard to avoid the another one. I mean, I looked all through your stuff. The fact that you were with Davy Jones, who I happen to be a huge Monkees fan, how did that come about that you became buds with him? I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, I don't really remember, how we met. I know there was a photographer that was a big photographer in LA, and he did a lot of the shoots for a lot of the teen magazines and stuff. We may have met that way,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, he was. I think one thing that brought us together, we were both real short guys.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
and because Davey was a few years older, but one of the nicest guys. And yeah, Laurie and I, my wife, we met him uh, a few years ago at an event in New Jersey, Chiller, and it was the last time that we saw him before he passed. But what a super guy! What a great guy!
That's pretty cool. I want to actually flip back as you were talking. I was just thinking about your mom. When you were now I get the Jane Wyman thing, but you were in these, the films Back from Eternity with Rod Steiger, we're talking about, as you said, Country Girl, you're talking about Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly. Was your mom, obviously you're a little kid, she had to be there. Was that just like mind-boggling for her? I mean,
Oh,
that's a
she loved.
big
Oh,
deal.
she just loved it. She loved it, and mom was great. She fit right in. If she didn't understand something, she learned. One thing she had to learn pretty quickly was, if she saw something, she'd say something about it, like, well, I don't think that's good for him to do this or whatever. And she'd go up to the director and say, are you sure you were going to have my son do that? And somebody finds it, ma'am, do not go up to the director and tell him what to do. This is not what, he'll tell you, okay, get rid of that kid. That kid's out of here. So mom learned, but no, she was great. And she was with me 90% of the time. And when she wasn't, we had a little old lady, like a little grandma lady, Mrs. Olson, who would watch me. But they always had the school teacher on the set, social workers, and people to make sure everything was up and up.
Wow, that is pretty cool. Hey, this has got to be something that most people just never get the opportunity to do. Even your fellow actors. Your shirt and jeans are in the Smithsonian Institution. I
Right.
mean, it doesn't get much more of an honor than that as an American. What was that like for you? I mean, that's really crazy.
That was really crazy. I got a letter years back from the Smithsonian saying they were doing an exhibit, television in America, and did I have anything to donate? I had nothing really, so I called mom, and she said, "Well, I never told you this, but I have your whole outfit." So
Wow.
she sent me the outfit with the tennis shoes and the jeans and the shirt, the whole thing, and so sent it off to the Smithsonian, and I had to sign a million documents that I never want it back. But when they opened the exhibit, they invited us out. So with the family, we all went back to Washington. And when you first walked into the room, it was an old Sylvania television tube, and it was in a lucite case. And I don't remember seeing one back in the day, but I know they made them, and it was gorgeous. But you saw that. Then next to it was Archie Bunker's chair, the Fonz's his leather jacket, and then Timmy's outfit. And that was, so pretty iconic, and I have no regrets.
Oh my God, were you a bit choked up? I mean, that's kind of a big deal.
It was. No, it was super.
Oh wow, what an opportunity. Well, you know what? Yeah, I'll tell you that you've been just terrific. I don't want to keep you any
Ew.
longer, but John, thank you so much. I mean, really.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and we dress alike. And I just, over my shoulder right there is a copy of my book, right there, Timmy's in the Well, and it originally came out in 2008. A lot has transpired in that time, and so we just updated the book with a new chapter and added some more photos and a lot of stuff. So it just came out and is available on Amazon and bookstores, or my website, which is just jonprovost.com. And I do a lot getting in to start doing a lot of the autograph shows, the Comic Cons, those kind of things again. So if people go to my website, they'll see where I'm going to be if they want to come out and say hi and shake my hand or whatever. So
That's fantastic. Yeah, and of course, I mean, I don't. And by the way, on the other side of the coin, because I give everyone that's on the show an opportunity to either talk about what they are doing, like you were saying, or charities they're involved in, or anything like that. Is there anything on that end of the spectrum that is kind of dear to your heart?
Well, I mean, I've all dogs, always there, and I've raised lots of money for shelters across the country, and worked, in lobbying it for dog pet laws, things like that. And mainly if somebody's, especially now because with COVID and things that are happening with the disasters, there's a lot of animals out there that need to be rescued. That's what we do now. Our last 2 dogs have been rescue dogs. Always had a dog, but I've always raised them from puppies and purebreds. But now it's the senior rescue, because they need that last few years of their life to be good. And so I think that's it. If somebody wants to do something nice and kind, go and donate to your local rescues, not to the big nationwide ones, but to your local ones.
Fantastic. And by the way, I was going to say, with your wife, I'm sorry, but prolific author, extremely well respected. I don't know if she's still there, by the way. If she is, terrific. But I would like to also give the opportunity, because she just had a book that just recently came out too on the Beatles, and I think it'd be good for the audience to know about that.
You would.
Oh no.
She's going, oh no. Top of the mountain, the Beatles at Shea Stadium. It was the first concert outdoors in a big stadium, in a ballpark stadium. The Beatles did it. They earned more money than anybody had earned at one event, even Elvis.
Wow.
And they changed everything, because now that's all we see is concerts. They're all in big stadiums. But started out with the little teeny amplifiers out there. I saw the Beatles twice too. I saw them at Dodger Stadium and at the Hollywood Bowl, and you couldn't hear anything. I mean, because the girls were just screaming. But no, she's got this. The book is excellent. Hundreds of photos that have never been seen before. And yeah, so it's called Top of the Mountain, and it's available at her website, or at Amazon and the bookstores, wherever.
And what is her website? Is it specific? Do you know, is it lauriejacobsen.com or something like that?
lauriejacobsen.com. And let's see, I was trying to grab that. I'm trying to, I thought I had a copy of the book here. No.
It's all right. Yeah, and I see behind, ironically, I just saw in the corner of your head, it says the Beatles. So it was like perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was great. And she co-authored your book.
When we did, Timmy's in the Well. I had a lot of stories, but I'm dyslexic, and so writing doesn't work so great for me sometimes. But we was really proud of the job we did.
John, thank you so much, and please extend that to Laurie as well. And really appreciate you. And who knows, maybe I'll see you at one of these shows at some point. I know there's one coming up in LA soon, so who knows? Maybe
you never know.
You never know. But total pleasure.
Check the website.
Yeah, check the website. Exactly. That's right. JonProvost.com. I got it. All right, John. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Peace.
Hey, don't forget to hit the subscribe button in the corner of the video. And if you like the video, please hit the like button as well. And while you're here, take a look at some of the other great interviews from anybody from Jerry Mathers to Butch Patrick to Judy Norton. All fantastic. Have a great one.